Hello and welcome to this session. So today we are going to be discussing about DNS, which is domain name system. We are going to understand what is DNS and understand the role that it plays in our networks. So what is DNS? DNS is a protocol or a service that helps resolve domain names into IP addresses. Now, it is fairly difficult to remember so many IP addresses that refer to websites or accounts that we visit online regularly, and therefore DNS is supposed to map IP addresses to alphanumeric character strings, which means that if you search for a certain website, let's say www.google.com on your web browser, the computer only understands that in terms of IP addresses. So am I going to get that information from this IP address? So that is what basically computers understand, and this is where domain name system comes in. When you search using a string of characters, then that string of characters is resolved into an IP address by either the router or a top level domain server. If not that, it is usually a root server, and this string of characters is resolved into an IP address that redirects you to the location of what you may be searching for on the internet. Now, there's some components of DNS that we need to understand. One is a domain name, which is a DNS name. It is a sequence of characters that identify hosts. That is a certain IP address refers to a certain name, DNS name. Okay, so it basically maps on either direction, either from IP to DNA to a domain name, or a domain name to an IP address. Now, there is a domain server. This maintains mappings between domain names and IP addresses and responds to requests from the DNS resolver. Now, the basic process of resolving IP addresses starts from our routers, because that is where IP addresses now go into the internet. If your router is your DNS server, and basically you have a server inside your network with a certain IP address, but you have named that server, and when you go to search for it on the web page, you search for it using a name. If your router knows about the location of whatever you're searching for, then it's going to redirect you there. If it doesn't know, it's going to send you to a DNS resolver, who is usually, and in most cases, our internet service provider. That is our DNS resolver. So the router will ask from the ISP or ISP router connections, do you know the location of this IP address? Okay, if it doesn't know, then it's going to direct that to the root server, which is a set of 13 servers that are set up strategically all over the world in order to resolve root domains. Okay, now after asking the root server about an IP address, it will not resolve that for you. It will direct you to a top level domain server, which will now resolve your IP address to a web page or a login page to an account that you frequently visit on the internet. Now, root servers are top in the DNS hierarchy. Remember that we have said that if your router does not know a mapping of a certain address, IP address to a string of characters, it will basically ask the ISP, which is the DNS resolver. Okay, the ISP in most times acts as our DNS resolver. Now, if the DNS resolver, our ISP, does not know where that website or account is on the internet, then it's going to direct you to the root server. That makes our root servers top in the DNS hierarchy. And you have basically said that there are 13 sets of servers with unique IP addresses strategically placed around the world in order to maybe reduce latency and such. They are operated by 12 different organizations, and the root server basically directs the resolver to the top level domain server that can resolve information for top level domains such as .net, .org, .com, and this recognizes global organizations and such. Now, second level domains identifies companies or institutions or maybe countries in some cases. Okay, a subdomain identifies a branch or a division in an organization or company, and a host is a type of service that you are accessing. It could be web page, you could be using FTP, and that is basically it when it comes to DNS. Now, there are different query modes when it comes to DNS, and this comes because DNS is a distributed system, and the DNS servers do not reside on one place, and then all DNS or one DNS server cannot hold all domain name records. Now, when a client queries for a domain name from a DNS server, but the DNS does not have a record of the domain name, the client can continue querying in the following ways. There is recursive query, is where the DNS server queries to another DNS server and returns the query result of the DNS client. This is where we have talked about if our router does not know the location of a certain IP or a certain mapping of a domain name in our network, then it's going to ask for that mapping from the ISP. And also, if the ISP does not know, then it's going to ask from the root server. That is what we basically call a recursive query. Now, iterative query, this is where the DNS server informs the DNS client of the IP address of another DNS server from which the DNS client queries the domain name. And this basically happens when the root server is redirecting you to a top level domain server to resolve your queries. This is where iterative query comes in, because the root server will not give you that page. It will give you an IP address which you'll later go and search for your mappings, and then the query will be resolved for you. So I believe that's it when it comes to DNS, and see you in the next one.